I'm going to call the BZA meeting to order, and their first order of business this morning is a request for an extension. Mr. Dixon, I'm going to go ahead and read the...
All right, in case 6531, we got a letter from a Jonathan Nussbaum. Dear members of the board, I am writing to request an extension regarding the variance approved for case 6531. We waited until the variance was approved and the health department approved the septic plan prior to the architect starting on the plans for the barn dominium. That being said, with his current workload, the time frame that I anticipated will not be met. According to the contractor we are still weeks away from having plans to submit. That being said, we would like to request the maximum extension of 12 months to allow for any issues with supply chains and plans getting submitted to the required parties.
Okay, everybody remember this one? This was up on top of the hill and down the southern end of the county off of Enoff Drive. Is that it? I think it was off Enoff Drive. And the mother lived in the house.
Enoff Drive, 2154.
The mother lived in the house and her son was gonna live there, and they were gonna build a barn and living quarters.
I remember.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's,
Yeah.
It's an odd-shaped lot, right?
yes, very, very odd shaped, and that was the flattest spot to put it, and that's, we gave them a variance on the
Right, I
distance
remember
for-
that, yeah.
I remember that. Mhm.
Okay. So,
I think it's a reasonable request, yeah.
Yeah. I make a motion that we extend the 12-month extension in case number,
6531.
yes.
Well, it's another 6 months because we must have given them
Oh, that's right.
6 in the first
Okay,
place.
I stand corrected. An additional 6 months extension.
okay,
I second.
okay, very good. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Mr. Dixon. Now, the next case we have is case number 6551. Before we get started, if you haven't signed in on the clipboard over on the side, go ahead and do that. You can go ahead and come to the table here. Mr. Dixon's going to introduce the file, but before we get started, there's a couple of housekeeping things. Make sure that you leave by the same door that you came in, so they're not looking for you at the end of the day. And make sure that any electronic devices are on silence. Okay? So, Mr. Dixon, would you go ahead and introduce you can go ahead and have a seat. Mr. Dixon, you want to go ahead and introduce the file for case number 6551.
All right, case 6551, an application for conditional use for a private cemetery. The site is located at 1218 and 1220 Francis Scott Key Highway, Keymar, Maryland, on property zone C1, Commercial Low Intensity District and Election District 10, by Suzanne Keene, Code of Public Local Laws and Ordinances, Section 158.082. A site visit is tentatively scheduled for April 16, 2025, at approximately 10 a.m. In the file of this matter, we have the following documents. Site minutes. There's an April 14, 2025 memo from the Bureau of Planning after having reviewed the BZA case. The above referenced BZA case has been reviewed for consistency with the policies and recommendations contained in the Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019, the Carroll County Water and Sewer Master Plan, and other functional plans. Based on the factors above, the planning staff finds this request for conditional use is consistent with the Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019. Signed Carly A. Falat. There's an April 14th, 2025 letter from Daphne Daly, Secretary to the Planning Commission, to the Board. After having reviewed the information contained in the attached analysis, the facts as presented in the application, the relevant portions of the applicable comprehensive and other functional plans, and in accordance with the land use article, this conditional use request, if granted, is consistent with the policies, timing of the implementation of the plan, timing of development, timing of rezoning and development patterns. There is a response to Joe Vance's request to various state and local agencies from Thomas Harris, permits and inspections. There are no comments. There is a response to Joe Vance's request from Lisa Staley, Carroll County Environmental Health Department. Proposed use may not be acceptable unless it is demonstrated that there is an adequate water supply and adequate area for the installation of an initial and two replacement septic systems for the proposed use and any existing uses of this property. There is a response to Joe Vance's request from Laura Matthias, Bureau Chief, Development Review. A site plan shall be processed in accordance with Chapter 155.050A1. There is a notice public hearing for this case, March 31st, 2025. There is a response to Joe Vance's request from Janet O'Meara, Bureau Chief, Resource Management. Comments? None. There are comments from Anastasia Yemelyanova, Zoning Administrator. Wait a minute. It's March 25th, 2025 has comments, and then another one says no comments. Hearing notice was posted March 26, 2025 by Zoning Inspector Michael Roth. There is a response to Joe Vance's request to various state and local agencies from J.P. Smith Jr., Program Manager, Ag Land Preservation Program. This property is not in ag preservation. I have no comment at this time. Then we have the application. And the application includes an aerial photograph, 1218 Francis Scott Key Highway. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
Do I have a motion to enter the file into evidence?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
We'll go ahead and move the file into evidence. So, Ms. Keen, I'm assuming that's you sitting at the microphone. Before we get started, I'm going to need you to stand and go ahead and take the oath.
Yes, sir.
Are you going to be a witness also, or you?
I mean, if you need me to be, yeah. I'm her daughter-in-law.
Okay, just stand to take the oath in case you need to.
No problem.
We need any information from you. Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, both of you just sit there. So here's the way our procedures are. You go ahead and present your case. We'll have the opportunity, anyone in the audience, as you can see it's packed,
Right.
will have the opportunity to ask you questions. We can ask you questions, and then you'll make summation comments. If anybody does show up, they can make comments also. And after the summation comments, we'll go ahead and deliberate the case and make a ruling.
Okay, yes, sir, thank you.
Okay.
I don't know how to start. I just wanted to bring my husband home. We lived there over 30 years. Sorry. That's what I want. I mean, I have a perfect place. You can see the mountains. It's not, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say.
The last question.
I'm sorry.
So the purpose of this request is so that you can bury your husband and?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean, that's to him, hopefully.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? And the request here is for an application for a conditional use for a private cemetery, and that is a conditional use, it's not a principal permitted, and that's why you're here before this board.
Yes, sir.
Any
No
questions? The only question I have, what's the size of the lot? Do you know
Acre and a
approximately?
quarter.
An acre and a quarter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we did visit the site nearly 2 weeks ago, I guess.
I didn't see you. I was looking for you, but I never saw anybody.
Well, actually.
We were waiting for everybody.
We went over on the other side and we went down into Bruceville, so,
Oh, okay.
because,
Uh-oh.
and then when we came out, we came over there and we're on that side of 194. So, any questions?
The only thing is, you'd like to bury your husband and hopefully 150 years from now, yourself there as
Yes.
well, so you're together.
Yes. And hopefully my son could go there too, eventually, family.
Okay, any other questions?
The only question I have is just informational. Isn't there an entity that kind of governs for the state of Maryland burial areas from a registration stand? I'm just asking, do you know the answer to that? I'm just kind of wondering. I mean, it's just situational awareness more than anything else.
I think I don't know this for sure, but there,
Sure, the health department too.
I think there needs to be documentation with the state that there's a burial ground there so that in the future it's not disturbed.
I think it's the
Yes,
health
sir, I would think,
The
yes.
health department, okay.
Health department.
Okay, I'm just kind of wondering.
Needs to
in
know where
general.
everybody's buried in case you had to be removed and replaced
Right.
somewhere else, I think. So somebody in the health department's supposed to know about it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it'll have to
That's
be,
all.
And
like,
you'll- and-
when I spoke to the health department, they said that they would zone it and it would be refiled with whatever committee needed to be done. And then the plot would be put into the computer that shows the,
I'm sorry, identify yourself
oh,
for
I'm
the.
sorry, my name's Nicole Smith.
Okay, Nicole Smith, okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay,
And I'm assuming that you're Suzanne Keene?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I forgot to give you those directions. You were supposed to tell us what your name and where your address is.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's my issue.
It's too early.
So,
They know more than we do.
yeah. So, any other questions?
There's no limit to the amount of plots that you can have? Or is that
I-
something that the health department would?
I guess that would be governed by the health department. I mean, our only role here is that
To
this
say
is not a
you can
principal permitted, it's a
Conditional use, and that's it?
And that's our only role in this.
Okay.
Other agencies take care of the
Take care of
details.
From there, okay.
yeah, suffice to say, it's a unique request. I don't think I've
Yeah,
ever settled on
I've been on here quite a while, and we've never had that request, so.
Oh, wow.
We're getting ready to buy a couple 100 acres of land, and I'm gonna put the cemetery request in it before we build the house, so it's taken care of beforehand.
Okay,
Okay.
no further questions from me.
Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, any summation comments?
No, can't think of anything right now.
Okay. Very good. Presentation of testimony and evidence is now closed, and the hearing and record of this case is now closed. And in accordance with the Open Meetings Act of Maryland, the board will now consider the case. Board members?
I have no problem with this.
Seems very straightforward.
Let's move along.
Okay,
Wow, thank you.
so
We have to vote yet.
yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
No, it's-
You want a motion?
yeah, I need a motion.
Okay, in case number 6551 before the Board of Zoning Appeals, the board approved the application for conditional use for a private cemetery.
Okay, do I have a second for the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Anything we left out, Mr. Dixon, in that motion? We're good? Okay. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Our oral decision will become final upon a written decision, which will be issued within 30 days unless otherwise extended by the board. And the board's decision may be appealed by filing a petition for judicial review with the clerk of the circuit court for Carroll County in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 200, Title 7 of the Maryland Rules of Procedure. The appeal must be filed within 30 days of the date of the board's written decision. Thank you very much, and
you.
this is adjourned.
Sir,
Have a
thank you.
great day.
So
I'm going to call the Board of Zoning Appeals hearing to order here. And what we have before us is case number 6553. And Mr. Dixon, would you go ahead and introduce the file for us, please?
All right, case 6553, an application for conditional use for a private K-8 Amish school and the variance for the driveway width. The site is located at 2444 Old Bachman Valley Road, Westminster, Maryland, on property zone A, agricultural district and election district 7. By Joseph Lapp, Code of Public Local Laws and Ordinances, section 158.071.01. A site visit is tentatively scheduled for April 16, 2025 at approximately 9:30 a.m. In the file of this matter, we have the following documents. Site minutes. There's April 14, 2025 memo from Carly Falat, Comprehensive Planning Technician. The above referenced BZA case has been reviewed for consistency with the policies and recommendations contained in the Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019, the Carroll County Water and Sewer Master Plan, and other functional plans. Planning staff finds this request for conditional use is consistent with the Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019. There is a April 14th, that was signed by Carly Falat. There's April 14th, 2025 letter from Daphne Daly, Secretary to the Planning Commission, to the Board. After having reviewed the information contained in the attached analysis, the facts as presented in the application, the relevant portions of applicable comprehensive and other functional plans, and in accordance with the land use article, this conditional use request, if granted, is consistent with the policies, timing of the implementation of the plan, timing of development, timing of rezoning, development patterns, land uses, and densities or intensities. There is a response to a comment memo from Joe Vance from Thomas Harris, permits and inspections. All comments will be addressed during the site plan and building permit process. There is a response to Joe Vance's request to various state and local agencies from Lisa Staley, Carroll County Environmental Health Department. Proposed use may not be acceptable unless it is demonstrated that there is an adequate water supply and adequate area for the installation of an initial and 2 replacement septic systems for the proposed use and any existing uses of this property. There is a response to Joe Vance's request from Laura Matthias, Bureau Chief, Development Review. A site plan shall be processed in accordance with Chapter 155.050. There is a response from Joe Vance from Janet O'Meara, Bureau Chief, Resource Management. See attached. Need site plan for grading and sediment control. If disturbance exceeds 5,000 square feet, site plan must address something. If a disturbance exceeds 4,000 square feet, Chapter 150 will apply to this project. There is a response from Anastasia Yamelyanova, zoning administrator, of her comments, no comment. March 31st, 2025, there was a notice of public hearing for this case. There is a response to Joe Vance's request from various state and local agencies, from J.P. Smith Jr., Program Manager, Ag Land Preservation Program. This property is encumbered by a Maryland Ag Land Preservation easement. The use of the schoolhouse has been approved by the Mouth Board of Trustees. Hearing notice was posted March 26, 2025 by zoning inspector Michael Roth. Then there is an application. I see some paperwork by CLSI. And there are some plans from James A. Koppenhaver of Drafting Concepts. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
Do I have a motion to enter the file into evidence?
So moved?
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move the file into evidence. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. We will go ahead and move the file into evidence. A couple of housekeeping details. It looks like everyone signed in on the clipboard on the side. If you didn't, make sure that you do before you leave. When you exit the building today, make sure that you go out the same door that you came in so that at the end of the day, they're not trying to locate you. And if you have any electronic devices, go ahead and silence those. Mr. Lapp, would you like to come to the microphone here? And let me explain the process. Mr. Lapp is the applicant for this request of a conditional use and a variance on the driveway width. He will go ahead and present his case and call any witnesses that he might want to call. You can ask anyone from the audience and from this board will have the opportunity to ask questions of his testimony. Again, questions of his testimony, what he actually said. And then after Mr. Lapp is finished with his case, then anyone can give their own testimony, go to the microphone and give their own testimony. And I ask that before you speak, you state your name, address, and occupation, and spell for the recording your last name. And I'm going to ask if anyone plans on testifying here today, if you will go ahead and stand and take the oath. So if you plan on testifying, it's free. I'll guarantee you, I'm not going to charge you for it. Mr. Frock, Mr. Frock, are you going to say anything or? Okay. And ma'am, you're?
Not necessarily.
Go ahead and stand. I promise you, I won't charge you, really.
I know.
And Mr. Smith, are you going to testify?
Only if I need to.
Okay, there you go. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, very good. Mr. Lapp, would you go ahead and present your case? And state for the record your name, address, and occupation.
Joseph Lapp. Lapp is L-A-P-P, 618 Humbert Schoolhouse Road, Westminster, Maryland. So I think the case has been presented pretty much what we're looking for. It's a one-room Amish schoolhouse, parochial school, same as we've done in a few other locations in the county. One classroom, grades 1 through 8, 2 privies, a horse tie between the privies.
And the other request is for a driveway variance. So can you please explain the reason for the request for the variance?
Well, we don't have a lot of traffic in and out. The school is usually limited to about 35, 36 students and 1 teacher. Most times, once we get, in the lower 30s, we'll look for another location rather than expanding the school. Children walk to school. Some of them, a few of them will get dropped off with small passenger vans. We don't have any large vehicles coming in. Some days, some might come with horse and buggy. And the existing driveway that is there, I believe that one might only be 10 or 12 feet, and it crosses a creek. So there would be a lot involved to widen it, and we really don't feel it's necessary for what we would be using it for.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Lapp's testimony? on a given school day, what do you think the traffic would be in and out? I mean, approximately how many vans, how many buggies?
In this case, probably 3 vehicles in the morning and 3 in the evening. 1 to drop off the teacher and 2 for students.
Okay. Questions? Any questions of Mr. Lapp's testimony, board?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Lapp. How are you, sir?
Good morning.
There was a mention of, in the file about an easement on the property. Do you know anything about that?
There is a mouth easement. The farm is an ag preservation, but we did get a approval from mouth.
Okay, so the easement is not an issue anymore?
No.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
What are the hours of the school?
8 to 3.
Monday through Friday?
Yes.
No questions.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Lapp,
One other question I had regarding, if this gets approved, regarding site plan. You mentioned, Timothy, about the Chapter 150, if it's under 5,000 square feet. Exactly what does that mean? Or what is in Chapter 150? I guess what I'm asking is, before 2019, a school in ag zone was a permitted use, which now it's a conditional use. And at that point, if we kept our disturbance under 5,000 square feet, we were okay to do a simplified site plan, which, you know, speeds up the process. So my question is, if this gets approved and we stay under 5,000 square feet, is that still the case? That it can be a simplified site plan?
Ms. Amira, can you answer that? Or would you like to answer that after the meeting?
I would defer that to development review to look.
Okay, okay.
Site plan and simplified site plan is for determination or the determination of the Bureau of Development.
Okay, so, and Mr. Lapp, that is not our issue, that's
Okay.
another department. But talk to Mrs. Amira back there after the hearing, and she can give you the contact information for the person to talk to.
Thank
okay?
you.
You have any witnesses? Or these guys are just here for moral support?
Yes.
Okay.
They're free to speak if they want to.
I see heads that are nodding sideways, so very good. Okay, and any other questions of Mr. Lapp's testimony? Okay. Anyone in the audience want to give any testimony? See, I talked you into taking the oath, so go ahead.
There we go.
And please
Hi, good
identify.
morning. Morris Ann Martin Wilson, and I reside at 801 Sullivan Road, Westminster. So I am in the general vicinity of where they're asking to put the school. And last name is Wilson. I am a newly retired Maryland Workers' Compensation Commissioner, so just in the last couple of weeks. I am in full support of the school being put in our area. We are completely ag, although the solar panel people are trying to get in, as well as our fight against the Piedmont project, but these people are good stewards of the land. All they want to do is educate their children to be good stewards of the land. We can't ask for anything more than that from them. So I am in full support of the school and live in that general vicinity, and I think a lot of my neighbors would agree with the same thing. Thank you.
Wait a minute, stay at the microphone. Stay at the microphone.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions of her testimony? Board members? Okay, now you can be seated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
What was your first name?
Morris Ann,
How do you spell that?
Morrisann.
R-R-I-S.
A-N-N.
A-N-N.
you got that? That was a new experience for Mr. Dixon.
Yeah, I know. It's a new one for everyone generally. But, I've lived in that area my entire life. My family has been there 100 years on the Luckaball and Mill Road and Sullivan Road area, so we're there.
Okay, any other testimony? Okay, presentation of testimony and evidence is now closed and summations are in order. Mr. Lapp, would you like to give any summation comments?
I don't think I have anything.
Okay, very good. The hearing and record of this case is now closed in accordance with the Open Meetings Act of Maryland. The board will now consider the case. Board members, who wants to go first?
First.
Mr. Caldwell.
Okay, I think it's, only concern I would have would be the driveway width, variance, but as you mentioned, Mr. Lapp, that you were crossing a stream, and I think to, upgrade that driveway width would be, a considerable hardship, financial hardship to do so. So I don't have any problem with the approving the variance for the driveway width. It only involves about the first 550 feet, not all the way to the house, so it's a relatively short, straight road. With respect to the school, I think it's a fine idea. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. Appreciate you doing it.
Ms. Boardmount?
I agree. It's very straightforward. It's a great place for the school. We did the site check. There's plenty of room. We understand the driveway situation would be a hardship, so I have no reason not to agree.
I agree. I don't have any objection to the approval. The driveway makes a lot of sense, notwithstanding, the hardship, but also the very, very, very limited use. I think we have to approach the variance with some reasonable thought processes, and I think that should not be a limitation.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement there. The practical difficulty and unreasonable hardship to widen that driveway, there's just no need for that. Based on the testimony that we got, that there would be 3 vans in the morning and 3 vans in the evening, or the afternoon, that amount of traffic does not warrant upgrading of that driveway, in my opinion. And in regards to the MALF easement, you've already got approval from the state MALF board to put the schoolhouse there on the property, and that's good that approval has already occurred. So, board members, do we have a motion?
I can provide one for you.
Okay.
In case number 6553, before the Board of Zoning Appeals, that the board approve the application for conditional use for a private K-8 school and variance for the driveway width.
Do I have a second of the motion?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The motion carries. Our oral decision will become final upon a written decision, which will be issued within 30 days unless otherwise extended by this board, and the board's decision may be appealed by filing a petition for judicial review with the clerk of the Circuit Court for Carroll County in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 200, Title 7 of the Maryland Rules of Procedure. The appeal must be filed within 30 days of the date of the board's written decision. Thank you very much for your participation, and this hearing is adjourned. We're going to call the BZA hearing to order, and before us, we have case number 6554. Mr. Dixon, would you go ahead and introduce the file for us, please?
All right, case 6554, an application for conditional use for a two-family dwelling with two variance requests. The site is located at 198 Adeline Drive, Westminster, Maryland, on property zone R10,000, Residence District and Election District 7, by Adeline Drive LLC, Code of Public Local Laws and Ordinances, Section 158.063 and 158.075.01. A site visit is tentatively scheduled for April 16, 2025, at approximately 9:15 a.m. In the file of this matter, we have the following documents. Site minutes. There's an April 14, 2025 memo from Carly Falat, Comprehensive Planning Technician. She states, planning staff finds this request for conditional use is consistent with the Carroll County Master Plan as amended in 2019. There's a April 14, 2025 letter from Daphne Daly, Secretary to the Planning Commission, to the Board. After having reviewed the information contained in the attached analysis, the facts as presented in the application, the relevant portions of applicable comprehensive and other functional plans, and in accordance with the land use article, this conditional use request, if granted, is consistent with the policies, timing of the implementation of the plan, timing of development, timing of rezoning, development patterns, land uses, and densities or intensities. There is a response to Joe Vance's request to various state and local agencies from Thomas Harris, permits and inspections. Permits are required for the conversion of the single-family dwelling to a two-family dwelling. There is a response to Joe Vance's request from Lisa Staley, Carroll County Environmental Health Department. No comment. There is a response to Joe Vance's requests from various state and local agencies from Laura Matthias, Bureau Chief, Development Review. There are no comments from Development Review. A comment from Janet O'Meara, Bureau Chief, Resource Management. Comments? None. Hearing notice was posted March 31st, 2025. Hearing notice was posted March 26, 2025 by Zoning Inspector Michael Roth. There is a response to Joe Vance's request of various state and local agencies from J.P. Smith Jr., Program Manager, Ag Land Preservation Program. This property is not in ag preservation. I have no comment at this time. And then there's a March 14, 2025 letter from Stephanie R. Brophy to Joe Vance. It includes this application. There's photographs at the end of it. There is a plan location drawing from NTT Associates, Inc. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. We will enter, motion carries, we will enter the file into evidence. Before we get started, if you haven't signed in on the side sheet, make sure that you do before you leave today. Make sure that you leave by the same door that you came in, so at the end of the day, they're not trying to track you down. And if you have any electronic devices, please silence them. Before we get started here this morning, I didn't realize this, but I've known Mr. Brock since his family moved up here when he was just a little tacker from Columbia, and he used to be my neighbor. So with that, I wanted to make sure I disclose that. And when it comes to voting, since we're down one person here today, I will not vote to make a tie. So I just wanted to put that out there, if that's acceptable to you, Ms. Brophy.
I believe so. Are you just saying you're going to abstain from voting?
Well, our rules are that the chair will not vote to make a tie, which
I-
would in fact be denial of a motion.
Right, I understand, so that sounds fair.
Okay?
I was gonna abstain.
Yeah. Well, if I abstain,
No, I'm teasing.
I'm basically, it's basically an abstention if it came.
If it came down to a tie, I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay? And with that, if you're going to testify here today, and it looks like there's only one person, if you could stand and take the oath, please. Okay, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very good. You can be seated. Okay, Ms. Brophy.
Okay, is it okay with you guys if I stand?
No. Matt wants you to be seated so that we get every word on the microphone, so you don't have to stand before us.
Okay. Okay, then when I do the exhibits,
Just bring them up to
Perfect.
Mr. Dixon, and he'll go ahead and enter those into evidence. We'll enter those into evidence.
okay, well, good afternoon, members of the board and Mr. Dixon. Thank you for hearing our case today. As you're aware, we're here asking for a conditional use to permit my client, Adeline Drive LLC, the ability to convert their single-family residence to a two-family dwelling. We have also included in our application 2 variance requests. One is for the lot area, and the second one is for parking requirements. At the outset, and as will be established through Mr. Brock's testimony, I wanted to just preface this with, we think it makes sense for these variances to be granted because of the peculiar nature of this property, and we think the testimony will show that. If, however, you determine that you're unwilling to grant the variance, we would still request that the conditional use be granted, and be required that we satisfy the statutory requirements of lot area and parking, which we could otherwise satisfy, as we will show you through Mr. Brock's testimony. So preference is grant the variances with the conditional use. The alternative would be give us our conditional use, but tell us that we have to satisfy lot area and parking. So painting that picture, I believe we could start. I will present Mr. Brock's testimony. As you're aware, you guys can ask him, and then I can wrap it up with sort of tying the legal, closing the legal loop.
Okay.
Okay.
You can proceed.
All right, I'd like, you can stay seated. As Mr. Bale has said, I'd like to call Mr. Brock my first witness.
And please state your name, address, and occupation.
My name is Gregory Brock, and I am living at 929 Fowler Road in Westminster, and my occupation is a real estate developer, real estate agent.
Okay. So, Mr. Brock, how long have you been a licensed real estate agent?
19 years.
And who are you licensed by?
The state of Maryland.
Okay. And are you a member of any professional organizations?
Maryland DLLR and the Carroll County Association of Realtors
Okay. And in what county do you perform the majority of your work?
here in Carroll County.
And how long have you lived in Carroll County?
35 years.
Okay. As part of your services, do you visit many residential and commercial properties in Carroll County?
I do every day
And do you become familiar with their uses?
on every property.
Okay. And generally speaking, what is involved in evaluating a property to determine its potential uses?
Checking the zoning, checking with health department, checking the surrounding areas, et cetera.
Okay. And what other services do you provide?
We have property management, asset management, and real estate sales and services.
In the course of providing your services, do you familiarize yourself with the applicable laws and regulations, including the Carroll County Code of Ordinances?
For every property and every client.
And in the course of providing your services, do you consider traffic flows generally?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to ask Mr. Brock to be qualified as an expert, as well as, a fact witness in this case, so he would be a hybrid witness for residential and commercial real estate and land use, particularly with Carroll County in mind.
And we will accept him as an expert witness in those fields.
Mr. Chairman, and I did not realize who Mr. Brock was, and I stand corrected. I just never married the two up. You're part owner of 88 West Main Street?
Yes.
I have to eliminate myself. He's a client.
Well, part 88 West Main Street?
88 West Main Street, you were associated with the Coswells?
No.
The Coswells, Cosgroves?
Cosgroves?
I'm
88
trying to
West
get the
Main.
main client's name. Were you not involved in that transaction?
I don't believe so. 88 West Main Street. I have 166 West Main
Right
Street.
across from the Old Carroll Theater, next to Ernie's. Two buildings, front and back.
No, sir.
That's not you.
No, that's Vibe Realty. That is the brokerage that I hang my license under, but I don't own Vibe Realty.
Okay, then I'm fine. I'm so sorry, I just.
No,
the name
that's
just
okay.
just resonated with me. I went, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
very
Still
good.
thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's, I'm glad to take care of it at this point
Okay.
rather than later.
Yeah.
I'll take my heart out of my throat. Okay, so let's just recap. Thank you, he is qualified now as the expert witness. I think it makes the most sense now to have Mr. Brock identify the exhibits so that you have all of them in front of you for the pictorial representations and the location drawing as he testifies. So I will go ahead and do that. Mr. Dixon, would you like me to mark?
Sure.
Okay, I will go ahead and mark it. So, Mr. Brock, I'm going to show you what I am marking as Exhibit 1. And am I permitted to come get the
Yes,
courtesy
yes.
copies? Okay. So I'm going to show you what's marked as Exhibit 1. And can you explain what this shows? I may need two of you to share.
All right.
Maybe not. I did seven.
There we go.
We're good.
We're good.
Can you just explain what this shows?
Sure. This is an overhead view of our little community on Adeline Drive, showing the two entrances / exits and the subject property at 198 Adeline Drive at the back of the property.
Okay. Can you confirm that you are the principal of Adeline Drive LLC?
Yes, that is me.
And when did Adeline Drive LLC acquire 198 Adeline Drive?
January of 2025.
And can you, what is the current zoning classification?
It's R10,000.
And can you describe, well, actually, we'll do the next two exhibits.
Yep.
So I'm going to, you can keep Exhibit 1, and then at the end, I will ask them to be entered into evidence. And I'm going to pass out, what I'm showing you is Exhibits 2 and 3. And as I'm passing out the copies to the board, will you describe first what Exhibit 2 is showing? And obviously, this is what's different.
Yep. Exhibit 2 is a location drawing that includes a potential additional parking pad. Exhibit 3 is the current location drawing by NTT and Associates. Both exhibits are by NTT.
The one I just passed out was 2, and Mr. Brock, you just testified that that one shows a proposed parking pad.
Yes.
And where that proposed parking pad is shown, is that on the adjoining property?
Yes.
And do you own the adjoining, or does Adeline Drive LLC own the adjoining property?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be 3. So one of those shows the existing, the second one I gave you, the existing. The first one I gave you shows in red the proposed 20 by 20 parking in the event the variance was not granted.
Ms. Brophy, you want to go ahead and enter, you have more exhibits?
I do, and I thought I'd enter them all at once because
Okay, and that's fine. I
it
just
might
wanted-
be good for everybody to have them in front of them, and then so that he's looking at them as well if you have questions. That's what I
Okay.
was thinking. Okay. So how many bedrooms and bathrooms does 198 Adeline Drive have?
Currently, it is a 3-bedroom, 1 full bath, or 2 full baths, sorry.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what we're going to mark as Exhibit 4 and give the board a copy. And can you tell me what this Exhibit 4 shows?
Sure. This is my elementary floor plan drawing that I created of the current floor plan and the interior of the property at 198 Adeline Drive.
Thank you very much.
So it shows, for or is it fair to say that it shows current as-built upstairs and that the downstairs is an unfinished basement?
Yes, ma'am.
And so you're here today requesting a conditional use to convert this property to a two-family dwelling. What will you do to the basement?
The basement, the property is a split foyer with an entire unfinished basement that lends itself very easily to replicate / mirror the exact floor plan we have on the second floor of the property on the basement floor of the property.
Okay, are there any current code violations or citations related to this property?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Can you,
You lost your spot.
well, no, I'm good. Let's talk about the entryway.
Yes.
So I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 5 and pass the board out their copies. But can you describe how you will make this a two-family dwelling?
Sure. So currently, the driveway comes right up to the side of the house where there is a French door to the unfinished basement, and the other entrance is the front door on the front porch. So our intention is to have the basement unit be entered from the side French doors and the upstairs unit enter from the front door.
Okay. Have there been any previous zoning applications or variances requested for 198 Adeline Drive?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and are there any existing easements or encumbrances on the property?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So you've explained in detail your intention to convert the property and finish the basement so it mirrors the first floor. Entry for the top floor would be from the front, entry to the bottom floor would be from the French doors. What's the proposed square footage for each of these units?
I believe it was 1,288 square feet.
Okay. And have you conducted any studies or assessments to determine the impact of this conversion on the surrounding neighborhood? Are you familiar with the area?
Yes.
Okay, can you share with the board Adeline Drive,
Sure.
the ownership of the other properties on Adeline Drive?
Yes, so Adeline Drive is a small community right off of Bond Street that we own the entirety of that has multiple multifamily homes. There's 2 duplexes, a unit that used to be a vet, Dr. Herrick's vet office that is converted to 2 units and an office dwelling, and then a single-family home that used to be Dr. Herrick's home as well.
And is there any concern about increased utility usage or wastewater management?
So we will have to get permitting and get additional, get a separate metered for both water, sewer, and electric.
Okay, and you intend to complete the required permitting and other processes should the board grant this conditional use?
Yes, we have a great relationship with the permits office. We will continue to keep that.
Okay, have you considered the potential impact on property values in the neighborhood surrounding 198 Adeline Drive?
Yes, I believe it would improve the value.
Okay. And what measures do you think you need to take, if any, to make sure the exterior appearance of 198 Adeline Drive remains consistent with the neighborhood?
There's no exterior modifications would be needed to stay consistent.
Okay, let's talk about the parking variance request. So currently, as the property is shown, if everybody looks at the series of photos, Exhibit 5, or if you look at the location drawings, you can see where the parking is. So Mr. Brock, I'm gonna have you explain the current parking, just as is. It's shown on the first page of that picture, and why you're requesting a variance.
Right, so currently, the tenants at 198 have a place to park in front of the French doors, and then there is essentially like a backup pad from there for them to be able to get out. The intention would be to extend that so that you could park 2 cars to the right, and that way everybody has room to back in and out.
Okay, and so it's your understanding that the parking requirements for 2-family dwellings is 2 cars per unit, correct?
Correct.
Okay, So, and we're here today requesting a variance, saying that we would only be required as a conditional use to provide 2 parking spots at this dwelling, correct?
Correct.
Do you have overflow parking that is near this dwelling?
Yes, so at the bottom of Adeline Drive, closest to Bond Street, there is a parking pad for additional parking. Additionally, if you look at the overhead, the Exhibit 1, there's additional parking in front of the main building that used to be the veterinarian at 223 and 221, and there's parking alongside of it as well.
Okay, let's talk about the uniqueness of this property, because as the board knows, and I've explained to you, that a request for a variance requires that we find some uniqueness and that it's not of your doing on this property. So can you please describe it, based on your experience with real estate, this particular lot, how it's set up, and explain to the board, why you think it makes sense to have the variance?
So the property itself lends itself quite easily to 2 units based on the construction of the home and the lack of any use of the basement by the current tenants, as well as the fact that it's over 10,000 square feet, the lot itself, and the location within Adeline Drive having additional open space and parking in the community overall. I think it's a unique property in that regard.
Okay, and in your experience, can parking requirements of tenants also be managed in private lease terms?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so for example, if you had 2 tenants and you didn't have enough parking, you could include in your lease that one tenant, for example, was allowed to have 1 car?
Yes.
Okay, but that's probably not necessary because you have overflow parking?
Yes.
Okay. And if the board decided today that we had not established a high enough uniqueness of this property to warrant a variance from the parking requirements, would you make the parking pad and/or ensure that overflow parking was available so that you could satisfy the statute and get the conditional use for a 2-family dwelling?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to talk about the lot area variance request. So Mr. Brock, as you're aware, in this application, we're requesting a variance from the lot area requirement of 7,500 square feet per unit, which equals 15,000 square feet for a 2-family dwelling, to the existing 10,881 square feet for 198 Adeline Drive. Now, you've discussed already, so I won't ask you again why you think that this lot is sufficient for a 2-family dwelling. Have you explored any options to acquire additional land should the board determine that a variance is not warranted in this instance?
Yes, since we own 2 of the 4 neighboring properties, we could essentially move lot lines to acquire more land for 198.
Okay, I would like to direct your attention to Exhibit 1, and just to remind the board, Exhibit 1 is the overview picture, so we can look at what he's discussing. So the overview picture, 198 Adeline Drive, just remind them, it's
at the top, at top of the exhibit, in the back of the lot, and then there is additional land not needed for 221 and 223 Adeline Drive to meet requirements that we could redo our lot lines to include an additional, I guess, 4,000 square feet so that we could meet that requirement.
okay. And is it your testimony today, though, that that would be just a technically meeting the statutory requirement, not necessarily increasing the livability or quality of 198 Adeline Drive?
Yes, it wouldn't change. It would purely be a technicality because it doesn't change the living or the health requirements or any of the other requirements for the property.
Okay. And just to remind everybody, we are in an R10,000 district, which the primary purpose is for single and 2-family dwellings with minimum lot area requirements, and Mr. Brock just testified that his lot is 10,881. The bulk requirement under the ordinance requires for a two-family dwelling that the lots have 7,500 square feet per unit, which seems inconsistent with we're in R10,000, and that's part of the reason we're asking for this variance. Okay, so discuss the property again, how it's laid out in relation to the other. We're just trying to establish why you believe that your property is peculiar enough to warrant a variance.
Right, so again, there's lots of open space in front of the home. Behind the home, there's a deck and additional open space, giving ample room for one tenant to use the back area for outdoor space and the other tenant to use the front area of the space. And then again, behind 221 and 223, there's additional open space for any of the tenants to use.
Okay. And is it fair to say that it would be practically difficult to change your lot lines? In other words, it would be doable, but it would be a practical difficulty to go do a deed of add-on and all of those things just to satisfy the
Yep.
square footage requirement for the lot?
Yes.
Okay. And I just want to remind the board that area variances have a lower bar to meet than if it was a use variance, for example. So area, setback, all of those have a lower legal standard for what strict compliance, would have to meet, and peculiarity and uniqueness. And it's a practical difficulty test rather than the undue burden test. I'd like to move on looping back to the conditional use, the big picture here, which is what we're asking for a conditional use for a two-family dwelling. Are you familiar with the zoning regulations for the residential 10,000 district in Carroll County?
Yes.
Okay. And how does your proposed conversion of 198 Adeline Drive align with the intent and purpose of the R10,000 district?
Our point is to get good multifamily good housing in R10,000.
Okay. And have you reviewed the Carroll County zoning ordinance regarding conditional uses in residential districts?
Yes.
And what steps have you taken to ensure that the proposed use at 198 Adeline will comply with all applicable building codes and regulations?
We will work closely with the permits office to ensure that we get all the permits necessary to meet or exceed those standards.
Okay. And so have you consulted with Carroll County Department of Planning?
Not beyond this, not
Okay.
yet.
And are you aware of the specific requirements or conditions that must be met for the conditional use approval in the R10,000 district?
Yes.
And is it this board's approval?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have any concerns about the compatibility of the two-family dwelling with any surrounding single-family residences that might be near this location?
No, along Bond Street there, I mean, obviously within Adeline Drive, there's multifamily housing, and then directly to the south of our property is an apartment complex.
Okay. And so you're comfortable that the proposed use of a two-family dwelling can be operated at 198 Adeline Drive consistent with applicable Carroll County ordinances?
Yes.
Okay. And subject to your request for a variance from both the lot area and parking requirements, are you comfortable that it meets all the land use requirements of the code?
Yes.
Based on your familiarity with the traffic flow of the area of Bond Street and Adeline Drive, is there anything you're aware of to suggest that the traffic impact of the proposed use would adversely impact this area?
No.
And are you familiar generally with various traffic flows associated with different types of uses, such as residential, two-family, multifamily?
Yes.
Okay. And would it be fair to say that the proposed use would not have a significantly increased traffic flow rather than a single-family use?
Correct. Yes.
Do you have any reason to believe conducting the proposed use will have an adverse impact on the residences along Adeline Drive?
No.
Do you have any reason to believe conducting the proposed use will have an adverse impact on residential properties that lie nearby on Bond Street?
No.
Do you have any reason to believe conducting the proposed use would have an appreciable increase in traffic on either Adeline Drive or Bond Street?
No.
Do you have any reason to believe that conducting the proposed use at 198 Adeline Drive will cause dangerous traffic conditions on either Adeline Drive or Bond Street?
No.
Are you familiar with the surrounding businesses in the neighborhood in the vicinity of 198 Adeline Drive?
Yes.
Are you aware of anything that would jeopardize the lives or property of people living in the neighborhoods near this property that would be caused by conducting the proposed use at 198 Adeline Drive?
No.
Are you aware of anything that would adversely affect public health, safety, security, morals, or general welfare by conducting the proposed use at 198 Adeline Drive?
No.
Are you aware of anything that would adversely affect people's peaceful enjoyment by conducting the proposed use at 198 Adeline Drive?
No.
Are you familiar with noise levels of different uses between single-family versus two-family dwellings?
Yes.
Is the noise level of your proposed use low?
Yes.
Are you aware of anything to suggest the noise levels for the two-family dwelling would be great or have a negative impact on the surrounding area?
No.
Are you aware of anything to suggest that operating the proposed use at 198 Adeline Drive would negatively impact neighboring property values?
No.
Are you aware of anything about the proposed use that would suggest odors, dust, gas, smoke, fumes, vibrations, glare, and noise would adversely affect the surrounding properties?
No.
Okay. And are you aware that the purpose of the R10,000 district is primarily to provide a location within the designated growth area for smaller lots, for single and two-family dwellings?
Yes.
Okay. You already testified that it's your opinion that the proposed use will not have an adverse impact upon adjoining and surrounding properties. For argument's sake, if we assume that the proposed use would have an adverse impact on adjoining properties, are you aware of anything to suggest the proposed use here, two-family dwelling, would result in an adverse impact upon adjoining and surrounding properties unique and different from its impact if this house was located somewhere else?
No.
Okay. I'd like to take a moment to make sure that I've covered what I think I need to cover. At the outset, I can tell, if we look at Exhibit 1 again, I do just want to ask Mr. Brock a couple of questions about this lot in particular. Can you describe the topography of this lot and how it is different and unique from the surrounding properties around it?
Yes, so the topography of the lot starts quite high behind 198 and slopes down towards 196, and that topography kind of follows behind the old vet building at 223.
Okay. So, before, I believe that I've established his testimony and about what we're trying to do, I'd like to see if the board has an opportunity for questions before I would do a closing.
Do you want to go ahead and, you want to enter these into, do your exhibits into evidence?
I can do that.
You need mine?
I need all of those. Those are
Okay.
the marked ones.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Bale. I'd ask that applicant's exhibits 1 through 5 be entered into evidence.
And we will accept those into evidence. Yep. No,
Oh,
Tim.
just give them to me.
Thank you.
Okay, questions, board members?
I have questions.
Go ahead,
Julie.
Go ahead. Ms. Ford-Mount.
The property, is it public water and sewer?
It is.
And the entire neighborhood there is public water and sewer?
Yes, the whole community on Adeline Drive is a public water sewer.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Caldwell.
Oh, she stole my thunder and took my question away. All right. I have a question concerning your discussion about lot lines versus, what the practical difficulty is with that. Where would you, if you had to change the lot size to comply with the 15,000 square foot requirement, how would you accomplish that?
Yes, so,
If you want, I could ask Mr. Brock to draw on here approximately where he would, and we could make this an additional exhibit, or we,
I can explain it real quick, though, but we would be essentially adjusting the two properties.
Wait, are we going after?
Yes, you're on Exhibit 1, the
Okay.
Google map. If you look on the farthest south, the one at 231
Okay,
Adeline.
wait a minute. Let's, As we come in the drive, as we come in Adeline Drive,
Yes, sir.
we have 194,
Yep,
196,
yeah,
and then this property, which is 198.
yes.
The first property on the right of Adeline Drive as you're going in, what is that,
That's 210 Adeline Drive.
that's 210.
So right here, I think this is 210.
That's the single family in the middle.
Okay, and then as you swing around, what would be the closest building on the other side of Adeline Drive to the property that you?
Yes.
What's that?
That's 221 and 223.
221 and 223.
Yes.
Yep, that's the one, because it's all the way in the back.
Okay.
Where's 214? No, sorry, 194.
Steel
I don't see it.
194?
Okay, then explain that.
194?
Oh, is this lot?
Drive.
No, it's this, that's 194, and that is 196.
Oh, so it's a duplex, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so this is
Got it.
194.
Okay.
194
All right.
and 196 because they're a duplex, and then this is 196.
So this comes into play, or the technical.
Wait a minute, let me,
Oh, sorry.
real quick. So which, is it 221 or 223 is the former vet office?
223 and 221 are on the same building. The previous owner of the building did the addition here for 221 to create the 3-bedroom unit out of that space.
Okay.
Which one is 221? I apologize.
So-
That's this one?
I'm not sure which ones. So if you're coming in Adeline Drive and you're making that right turn,
Yes.
is that 221 you come to first?
Yes, 221 on the left. If you made that right, to kind of go in front of Mr. Herrick's office, old office, the
First apartment on the left is 221.
All
Which
right,
would be at
then-
the right of the picture.
Correct.
No,
Yeah. I
And
think that's
so-
what you're saying.
Because looking at this building from the air, it looks like that long section of the building going further south is a different roof color, so I was wondering if that was an extension.
That is a garage section that Mr. Herrick, with the original owner of the property, added on. And then this 223 space in the middle was the original vet area and split off between the 221 and the 223.
Understood, okay, got it.
Okay, very
All
good.
right, so, back to my question, how would you propose to find 5,000 or 2,000, sorry,
4,000.
4,200 square feet?
Yeah, so again, the technical difficulty here is that the one we have yet to mention, the one at the very bottom of the page, the 231, has a lot of 0.46 acres, which is well above the requirement. So we would need to shift some of the land from that to the 223 and 221 lot, and then we would shift that land from the 221, 223 lot to the 198 lot. So we would essentially be changing lot lines on 3 properties to meet the requirement.
Okay, so if I'm looking at the Exhibit 2, there's, at the top of the page, it shows pin found, pin cap found. Those are the lot lines for 194 and 196. What sizes are those?
These I don't have on hand or remember quite, but they are smaller and they just meet the requirements for the R10,000. So I believe this one, we can't steal anything from the.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I'm going to ask this question. As a real estate developer, at sometime in the future, you don't know, the circumstances may change, you may want to sell one or more of these properties.
Yes, sir.
So, I'm concerned about creating a situation where one property is not compliant, as it appears right now that you're trying to do, and, the proposed 20 by 20 macadam parking area being on a different lot creates a problem for ownership.
Sure, yes. I can understand that completely. If we did single them off, the plots and sell them, it could become an issue at that point. It's our intention to keep these properties and keep the community as a whole, just like we purchased it as a whole. I would think an investor would probably do the same in the future.
Okay, next question is concerning that 20 by 20 macadam parking, is there any reason that could not be accommodated in the front area of the, of 198?
It possibly could. I was considering future tenants' enjoyment of the property with just the aesthetics of the property and also the use for kids, et cetera, that they would have a nice flat front yard to be able to use rather than this space behind 221 that is kind of unusable. If I cut into that hill a little bit and create a parking pad, it's a better use of the land.
221, I'm confused. Oh, yeah, I understand what you're saying there, but I'm thinking in terms of cleanness for, as,
Sure.
of transferring property, having something on an adjacent lot creates difficulties.
Oh, understood completely. Yes, I agree that you could get the parking pad within the boundaries of this this property now. I think for tenant use and enjoyment, it is preferable to do it behind 221. But if we did do the parking pad to meet your requirements, we could do it in the front yard.
All right, because you've got that utility, a 15-foot utility easement down the side, which is, I think it's got trees on it right now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that would be my concern there because, I'm a real estate agent myself, I'm a broker. And I would, be looking at this, and if I was going to sell this property, I would have, concerns about something being on a different location.
Right.
That's the only point there.
Mr. Caldwell and members of the board, if I could help him, Mr. Brock, clarify, I think, based on Mr. Caldwell's line of questioning. Mr. Brock, are you asking, do you have overflow parking where the tenants could park without adding this proposed parking pad?
Yes, I do.
And if the board grants your parking variance, would you have your tenants park in overflow parking just right down the hill?
Yes.
And even if you don't grant the variance, actually, I think those 2 parking spaces right down the hill would actually satisfy the ordinance because you have 4 parking spaces. It doesn't say that they have to be within 12 feet. It says you have to provide them, right? And the tenant has to sign a lease. So I would say without this pad was put on here to show an example of what could be done. So for example, if you did the pad as proposed, was your intention to have a permanent easement for the benefit of 198 on the other property that would be recorded in land records? It would affect the land like any other thing, right? Whether or not it would be marketability?
Right.
Okay. And then the last possibility is that you would move, if the board did not feel that it was able to grant your lot area variance request, would it be your intention that you would have to move the lot line from 198 over to where that parking pad is anyway, so it would be on 198's property?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Last question was on your comment about the square footage, although this is just out of curiosity more than anything else. The unfinished basement would actually be smaller than 1288 square feet because you've got a staircase going down, up and down.
Utilities probably, right?
Yeah, so we would have a small space for a water heater and an HVAC, but the stairs affect both levels
Right.
in its usability.
But the other thing I noticed was that the French doors are more central on the side, but you're showing a bedroom here. I was just curious, that's all.
There's room.
Bathroom, rather.
Yeah, there's room on that side to still
room,
get
okay.
there.
All right, I don't have any other questions. Thank you. Appreciate your indulgence.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Snyder.
So, how many bedrooms in the basement?
It would either be a 2 or 3 bedroom.
So, parking will be, given the number of bedrooms.
Sure.
Obviously, 4 spaces would be a minimum. I mean, with that number of bedrooms, it's just, you can put in the lease. I'm in that world. I could put in my lease all day long, and you're wrestling with the tenants every day, because they're not abiding by the lease. They're
Sure.
stacking cars and so forth. I was just kind of taking it back a bit about the density of the entire project here. Was that initially developed under a PUD, perhaps? Do you know?
I'm unsure.
You know what I'm saying, Melvin?
Oh.
It would seem, given the densities, it likely was developed under a PUD. It was developed under a PUD, it limits the number of total spaces that can be, living spaces that can be used within it.
I was wondering that too, or whether it was piecemeal accumulation.
Yeah, it's just weird density.
So-
And that made me think it was a PUD.
For what it's worth, I don't believe that it was a planned unit development. I believe that it was somebody who owned the properties and had off conveyances and a remainder.
It was just an observation that it just kind of surprised me somewhat. Okay, and that's all my questions.
The questions I have, and I realize, immediately when you turn onto Adeline Drive, there's spaces, 4 spaces there, whatever it is. But my concern, and when we did a site visit, we were in a rather small SUV, and there was one vehicle parked in the parking space. And with people's consumer habits have absolutely changed dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years, basically post-COVID. If you did not have the additional parking spaces on the adjacent lot, what would be the movement of a UPS or a FedEx truck coming in to deliver anything? Because it was rather difficult because of the curvature of the brick wall with the vehicle sitting there for us to get turned around. And I'd like to think that I'm almost an expert driver, but
You can drive a combine well, that's for sure.
so that's one of my concerns, especially when you looked at the actual site, and if we were only dealing with a single family and there's 2 spaces there, but now we're talking 2 families, I'm having a hard time understanding the justification for that.
Sure. So my intention with the proposed pad is to create enough space there so that both parties would have enough room to back up either direction. And it currently, I would assume, and I've seen that our FedEx drivers, Amazon drivers, take the right on Adeline Drive and walk stuff up, is what I've seen them do, rather than try to navigate that. But my intention with the pad is to essentially keep enough room so that both parties could go in the direction to back up.
Would you, just a quick question, would you have space, because I want to would you have overflow parking space to dedicate, let's say for 2 cars to meet the ordinance requirements of 2 cars per unit, which is 4 total for a 2-family dwelling?
Yes.
Okay, so he could dedicate. So if you tell us today, we are concerned about your parking, we're not going to grant your parking variance, which is not what I'm suggesting we're here asking. We're asking for everything in our application. But if you told us that today, I just wanted to make sure it was clear on the record that Mr. Brock can currently satisfy it, and that if he determines to do a pad, so I don't think that it would be necessary to put a condition on approval of the conditional use that he do the parking pad, because perhaps it would be superior for his tenants to have those 2 dedicated spots, or superior for him as a landowner, right? I don't know. I don't want us to make that decision for him if we don't have to. If we can establish here today that you need to provide 4 parking spaces, you can provide them. You can build the pad if you want to, or you don't have to. That's what I'm suggesting, I guess, to the board on that issue.
Did that generate more questions? Ms. Ford-Mount?
I don't have questions. I have a comment that it feels, no?
Just wait. We'll take your comments later. Mr.
No more questions.
Mr. Caldwell?
No further questions, sir.
I saw a puzzled look. I didn't read it very well.
Oh, I'm
I was born like that, Mel.
just fine as can be.
That's just his face.
Okay. Ver-
I would like to, Mr. Brock, before I do a closing, Mr. Brock, I'd like to ask him one more question, though. Is it your intention to do that parking pad in any case?
Yes. Talking with the tenants that I have currently at 198, they've been there for 15 years. They're really great women, and they're just really great people. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that their enjoyment of the property continues. And to do that, my intention is to do the easement and parking pad no matter what, whether it's required or not.
And if the board doesn't grant the lot area variance, will you satisfy the lot area requirements by adding the additional green space as you testified from 231 and 221 to this property, 198 Adeline Drive?
Yes, I will.
And is that space being used for anything right now?
No.
Okay. So it wouldn't be taking away from somebody if he had to do that, in other words?
Okay. Any other questions as a result of? We're good? Okay.
I don't want to delay things. Can we have just 5 minutes? Sorry.
That's okay. You would take a 5-minute recess?
Okay.
Okay, very good. We're going to take about a 5-minute recess. Hearing back to order.
In my absence, what?
I just want to make, you're clear with where all the addresses are?
Yes.
Okay. Any further questions? Ms. Brophy, any?
I'll ask 2 questions of Mr. Brock, and I'll give you a very brief closing.
Okay.
Mr. Brock, just to reiterate and make sure we have it on the record, are you here today for a conditional use requesting conversion from single-family to a 2-family dwelling?
Yes.
Okay. Have you also requested a lot area variance from 15,000 to 10,881?
Yes.
And have you also requested a parking requirement variance from 4 spots to 2?
Yes.
Have you also testified today that should the board determine that you have not met the standard and the criteria for granting your variance, that you could otherwise satisfy the ordinance's requirements for a two-family dwelling in this district?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to make sure was clear on the record. So for my closing, I just.
Wait a minute. So the presentation and testimony is now closed and summations are in order. I better do that for legal purposes. So go ahead, Ms. Brophy.
Just so I don't say two more questions. No. So I did just thank you for your time today, and I hope that we were able to answer all your questions thoroughly. I just wanted to remind the board that the two-family dwelling conditional use is presumptively valid. It has to be shown that this use would somehow be inherently worse at this location than in any other location for it to be denied. The variance standard is different, but I just wanted to sort of harp on that point that this is presumed to be a valid use in the R10,000, and the purpose of the R10,000 is to provide higher density on smaller lots, and it specifically says in the ordinance for single and two-family dwellings at 10,000 square feet. It says that. It's unclear to me in preparing for this hearing over the past couple of months why the bulk requirements don't match the actual zoning ordinance. But we're not here today, right, challenging that whatsoever. We've asked, but I'm just raising it to the board's attention that it didn't make sense to me. We have also asked for a lot area variance. Now, we acknowledge and accept that the standard for a variance, it's higher than the conditional use standard, right? The bar is not super high that an applicant has to meet to meet the standard for the conditional use. The variance bar is higher. I think we've shown testimony today that shows the lot is unique. Mr. Brock testified it was steep. Application had a request for a parking variance that he is able to, should you determine he has not met that standard for the variance, he is able to satisfy the ordinance for the required parking for the two-family dwelling in the R10,000 district. So I do believe he has shown that the conditional use should be granted. We hope that those variances are granted as well, but Mr. Brock is also here today to tell you that he would satisfy the statutory requirements. That, of course, is preferable than having a denial from this board today and having to wait for 2 years. And I would close on that.
Okay, very good. The hearing and record of this case is now closed, and in accordance with the Open Meetings Act of Maryland, the board will now consider the case. Board members.
If I could say something that, and for discussion purposes, I'm trying to understand, well, it's a presumptive use. Got it. The flip side is, it's consequential. If he doesn't get the lot variance, can the presumptive use be granted? Because he wouldn't meet the criteria. My point is, in order for it to be approved, he has to meet the code. Okay? And the way he'll meet the code is if we grant the lot variance. If we don't grant the lot variance, he doesn't meet the code. You hear what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's almost like a sequential thing. So I'm not saying how I'm going to vote. I'm provoking conversation, see if my understanding is correct. Because really, the vote in this should almost be 3 separate votes.
I would absolutely agree with that, that it should be, because we have three issues here that we're dealing with, and they're related and interrelated, but they're not the same.
Right.
And I would totally agree that we need to look at the conditional use for the two-family dwelling first.
Well, I would do that. See, I would do the conditional use last, because what I'm saying is, if we don't grant the variance, you can't grant the presumptive use, or the non-conforming use. Does that understand?
Yes, I was putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, so anyway, I mean, I think it's just, it has to be sequential.
Yes.
And then we could talk about the parking last, because that's inconsequential to approving the use.
So the variance request, the lot area variance request from the 15,000 is what we should is what you're.
That should be the very first thing we take in, because if that goes away, if the vote is no on that, in my opinion, I'm not an attorney, but in my opinion, the entire case goes away.
Mr. Dixon, may I chime in from a legal perspective or no?
Well, go ahead. We don't want to be wrong on, on the law, so.
Hang on, Tim.
What?
You're relaxing the rules.
It's not testimony, like, I feel comfortable, we haven't expanded the record, just to address, so what you guys are discussing, so it's not wrong, right? And that we're not discussing this on appeal. Is that I do not think that's legally necessarily accurate. You could approve the conditional use and say subject to, right? It's any condition. We don't have somebody here asking for conditions, but what I'm suggesting to you, you could say, rather than throw the, I don't want to use an analogy, right? But, throw everything out. You could say, we'll approve your conditional use subject to you doing that deed of add-on and getting that lot area and satisfying the parking requirements. That's absolutely preferable to saying, we're going to deny this, and that means we have to deny this, and then we go on,
Right. And I'm not saying it's gonna be denied, I just wanna make sure we do it in the right sequence.
Okay.
So can we discuss each of the three elements individually, please? And we can vote?
I absolutely think we should do that. And so the lot area,
I don't have a problem with.
but that should be the,
Yeah.
that should be the first order of business, correct? Is that what we're all in agreement with?
I'm looking at the code here, this says two-family dwelling, not in a planned unit development or in a retirement village. And it's got R 10,000 and R 7.5.
So we're voting on the area, we're discussing the area variance.
Right, but, why would you write this as the code and then have something else sit on top of it that demands double that number? 15,000.
But it goes to 15,000 with the two-family dwelling.
Well, this says two-family dwelling. Why, you'd raised this point before, why does it say, they add up? It just says here, as far as I can see, in this book, it says, two-family dwelling, not in a planned unit development or retirement village. R 10,000 or R 7,500.
Well, it's like, I would think it's like many things in our code, and they don't necessarily always align, but notwithstanding, I understand what you're saying.
And Ms. Brophy pointed that out in her opening comments, that the math didn't math.
Well,
May I also suggest something, Tim, legally, again? But this would be all on me. What if what if it's 7,500 per unit means per two-family unit? And I only thought of that when Mr. Caldwell just spoke. I'm the one who calculated and said per unit might mean 15,000, but that would make more sense, and that's a possibility.
it may be as a building unit as opposed to the number
Right,
of
a
dwellings within
two-family
it.
unit in the R 10,000 per unit, right, a two-family dwelling per unit. I had thought it meant that you had to have 15,000, but the alternative would make sense because it would be consistent, saying you have to have at least 7,500 square feet.
Oh, I'm looking at this from what's down here in the book. And it says two-family dwelling. Doesn't say anything about, asterisks or anything like that. It does mention 158,002 and 158,161. 002, I think, was it just general terms, right?
Definitions.
Definitions. 158,002. Why don't you guys continue talking while I look this up, make sure I'm on the right thing.
So I want to make sure I understand. So in order to, if it is 15,000, the extra would have to be borrowed from a separate lot.
Shifting the lot,
Shifting the,
the
on,
domino shifting.
on three, on
So
three
it
lots.
feels very like a square peg in a round hole, that we're going to shift because they currently own everything. And we always talk about here, future, future, future. The intention is to keep the property. My intention is to keep my property too, but it doesn't mean that that is how it rolls out in the future. So I'm not comfortable voting on something that is robbing Peter to pay Paul for a group of people who currently own property. That does not mean 20 years from now you will own that property. And we have literally shifted lines for an entire entire neighborhood. That's the lot. I do find when we went there that there are areas that a two-family dwelling would be less problematic because of where this property sits. It is very tight in there. If there's a lot of cars in there, it was very difficult for us to get back in there. A two-family, this isn't a necessity. This isn't like has to happen, just because it can potentially happen.
True.
And the parking, no one wants to walk all the way up a hill if you are a single parent or have a newborn and have to walk all the way up. That's not, maybe legally, you only need 4 and that's what you have. But if we're really talking about the comfort of the tenants, that does not seem like a good choice to me at all. So again, it seems very round, a square peg in a round hole to make this whole thing work. And I'm not super comfortable with all of the things that have to be taken into place to get it to work.
I agree wholeheartedly with the domino shifting of lots. Lots to lot, if you know what I mean. I just think that, I mean, now the line's not here, now the line's there. What's the substantive difference, other than you're trying to meet a criteria in the code?
Yeah.
And then there comes a practical aspect of it. So, I mean, you and I are on the same page on that one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, but from a resale point of view, you know, as Ms. Ford pointed out, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? So you may, under circumstances you don't want to deal with, have to sell. And now you created a real can of worms for yourself. And you may impact, by taking that whole slice behind that property, may end up reducing the value of those individual units because they no longer have any land associated with them. And then you have this large piece off to the side. It makes it, you know, it gets very complicated. You know, looking at this thing in the code, to me, going back to the area, land area, you fit under the R10,000 or R7,500, period. There's nothing else in the code that says you have to multiply that by 2 because there's 2 units. I think it's per structure is in there. That's how I interpret it. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that, but I don't think 15,000 makes any sense. The with respect to the putting the parking pad in another lot, I think you're creating problems there. I think you know, my suggestion would be to keep it within that 10,881 square foot lot. Keep it simple. Okay, you're renting to people, they're not owning it, they can decide, you know, maybe they want to put up a basketball hoop for kids or whatever. The court there would be useful from that respect. But, you know, I think looking at your requirements, I think they can be accomplished without changing lot lines.
And I would say one last thing, and I agree as far as the access and how it's limited. And that is subject to the initial development. What I'm saying is, I mean, that is just the way things were done back in the day. That would not occur today. The accesses would be larger and so forth. So, you know, I can't, although I fully understand it, I can't hold that against the applicant Because you want to recreate the entire development and the access, that just isn't, you know,
Sure.
that's not reasonable.
Sure.
But yeah, the lot is the lot. And people are not gonna park on the satellite lot. We all know that. They're just not gonna walk up. And you can deed it, you can do anything you wanna do it, they're not gonna park there. So, you know, I would think that that solution would have to be worked out in such a way. I would not support the parking variance. You know, they, as far as I would go back and say resolve it. And I think it's very resolvable, or they're able to address it. So,
So which issue we want to take care of first?
Well, I think we have to know, is it really 10,000 square feet or is it 15,000 square feet? Because how can we vote? Because clearly they meet 10,000 square feet, but they don't 15.
But they're asking for a variance on that.
Well, the,
right.
But they wouldn't need one if they didn't.
the file,
And that's
Nobody-
why I said we do the variance, because if we don't do the, you know, that is the kind of sequencing I was discussing.
Sure.
Now, we could if you deny the variance, then you can always, I guess, approve the conditional use subject to meeting the code space requirement, the lot requirement. I don't, I'm just babbling.
Do we understand what the lot requirement is? That's,
nobody filed any objections in the file about lot size. Nobody said right off the top, no, you can't do this.
You're talking staff.
Staff.
Staff
And that's part of our
response.
evidence, and their staff
Right.
response says it's no issue. So, you know, I take that to be, it's 10,000 square feet, boom, you're good.
Well,
You don't need a variance for that.
if the house was built before I forget what the code is, 68 or something, you'd have an absolute right to put a second dwelling in, put an apartment in. Doesn't have to come to anybody. So, just to let you know.
What is the age of the property?
I don't know when the house was built, yeah.
I think it was 1984.
But I do know I did check to see if there was an exemption for this lot area, whether the lot was created before it's August 17, 1963, I think. And it was difficult, it was difficult to determine with certainty because it was Bond Street extended. Like, I found a very, very old plat. But this lot seems to have been, as I discussed with you earlier, part of other off conveyances and a remainder. So I couldn't establish with certainty that there was an exemption. But we did discuss it with the county initially, that this lot could be exempt. But out of abundance of caution, we've proceeded as we have today.
Okay. Well,
And
of
of
course,
course, the house would be built, not necessarily when the lot was set aside.
I've got to say, you've really done your due diligence on this. I compliment you. You've got very good counsel. I think I'm leaning towards, you don't need a variance for area. But I think the parking situation can be addressed within
hold on.
the unit.
But that's
No,
the request.
the request was,
Well, we just had to put in the opinion that, no, the board didn't feel that there was a variance was needed for it.
Or you can just vote for the variance and call it a day.
Or, yeah, you can do either one of those.
well, it doesn't, it's the two variances it says here. One was the area, was that correct? The other one was the parking. So there's really only one variance then to consider.
I
No.
disagree because we need to address the variance because that is part of the request. They've made the request for a variance, yes or no?
Right,
And my point is, if you do not have a problem with it, you vote yes, because otherwise it's dangling out there in Never Never Land for interpretation.
Or you could say, no, we don't think a variance was needed.
See, but then someone's gonna pick up on that down the road, I bet.
May I suggest at this hearing, we have also amended as permitted. We have not substantially changed it, meaning we're here on a conditional use. But we have also, through my eliciting his testimony, stated that if it's determined that a variance wasn't, we couldn't meet the standard, which is similar to saying if it's not needed, right? We have asked this board today that primary request is that conditional use, secondary where the variance is. So I would just, make sure we clarify that not just what's on that physical application, as we've stated today, we're asking for the alternative, which is approve the conditional use subject to your conditions.
Okay, board members, I can't make a motion.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Mark, why don't you give it a shot?
Go ahead, buddy. Knock
No,
yourself out.
no, I was asking you to,
Oh, me give it a shot.
yes, please.
For purposes of the voting, I would say we break the question down in 3 votes. The first being, in case 6554, I would make a motion that we approve the variance request for lot size.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye?
All opposed?
No.
Okay, motion carries.
The second would be, in case 6554, I would motion that we approve the conditional use for a 2-family dwelling.
Okay, do we have a second on the motion?
Second, yeah.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye?
All opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries.
In case 6554, now see, I think I have to make a positive motion, it has to be voted down. Is that the way it usually works? I gotta make a motion to deny.
That sounds right.
Do I make a motion to deny? Or you make a motion for it to happen and it fails?
Well, yeah, let's do it that way.
Okay, gotcha.
They asked
Let's make
for
sure
it.
I'm following proper parliamentary procedure here. In case 6554, I motion that we approve the variance for the parking. And it'll die without a second.
Do I have a second? And that motion fails for a lack of a second. Do we need to restate that motion, or that's good?
That's good.
Okay. So we've taken care of all 3 issues.
Are there any other motions?
Yeah, any other motions?
No, I think that's only 3.
Okay,
They're
that's
the
what I
3
kind of thought.
they're
I
the
was
3
hoping.
requests and they're the 3 votes.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Our oral decision will become final upon a written decision which will be issued within 30 days unless otherwise extended by the board. The board's decision may be appealed by filing a petition for judicial review with the clerk of the circuit court for Carroll County in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 200, Title 7 of the Maryland Rules of Procedure. The appeal must be filed within 30 days of the date of the board's written decision. Thank you, and this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to call the BZA back to order. We have finished our cases for the day, and our last agenda item is election of officers. So, do we have a nomination for chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals?
I nominate Melvin.
Seconded.
Is there any other nominations?
Nope.
Okay.
Unopposed.
Yeah, I guess. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? No. Okay, that's my personal resistance. And then the position of vice chair. So do we have a nomination for vice chair?
We got quiet.
I'll nominate myself. What the heck?
Okay, any other nominations?
You gonna nominate yourself, Mark?
No, I'm sorry, I couldn't do that.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no?
No.
Okay. Motion carries. Okay. Very good, Mr. Caldwell.
See, easy peasy.
Okay, we are now officially adjourned.